Hi guys, Miss Jenny here. I hope you all are having a great Memorial Day, Monday. Sorry that our lesson is a day late this week, but I'm glad I got to get to it anyways. So we are going to continue on today with our character of Jacob. So last week, remember how we talked about how Jacob tricked his brother into receiving his blessing? So there was Jacob and Esau, and they were twins, and he tricked his brother Esau and dressed up like him and went to their dad Isaac and got his blessing. Sometimes tricks aren't very nice, huh? And they hurt people's feelings. And today we're going to learn about kind of how someone tricked him. And he might have learned his lesson from this one. So when we ended our lesson last week, we talked about how Jacob's mom, Rebecca, had overheard Esau telling Isaac, his dad, that he was so angry he could kill Jacob. And so she told Jacob that he needed to leave. And her uncle, Laban, said, or she had a brother, which was his uncle Laban, and that's where she said he should go. And that he should find a wife there maybe as well. So our story today starts out with Jacob, and he left his home in Canaan, where where Isaac and Rebekah and Esau were, and headed towards his uncle Laban's house. And we are in chapter 28 of the book of Genesis, and we're going to start at verse 10. It says, Jacob left Beersheba and set out for Haran. When he reached a certain place, he stopped for the night because the sun had set. Just like us, and when the sun goes down, then it's usually our bedtime. It was Jacob's bedtime as well. So, and by the end of the day, he had probably walked all day long, so he was really, really tired. Taking one of the stones there, he put it under his head and laid down to sleep. Can you imagine sleeping on a stone or a big rock? Because I can't. I think it would hurt my head. Our pillows today are really nice and cushy and soft, right? Well, this is what Jacob was laying on. See that big stone there? Ouch. That would really, really hurt. So as we continue on, it says, he had a dream in which he saw a stairway resting on the earth with its top reaching to heaven. And the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. That means they were going up and down the staircase. There above it, above the staircase, stood the Lord, and he said, I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham and the God of Isaac. So here's the first picture of his dream. And that was the craft I sent you this week. The angels kind of looked funny in the craft I sent, but I hope you were able to do it. Here's a different picture of Jacob and his dream. And see the angels going up and down the staircase? And then the Lord would have been right at the top of the staircase. So God said, I am the Lord your God. And here's the next picture we get to learn about. This is in his dream as well. And it says, God said, I will give you the land you are at, the land you are which you are lying, and your descendants, or your kids and their kids' kids, will be like the dust of the earth, and you will spread out to the west and the east, to the north and the south. So that is his dream of himself and all of his kids and grandkids and things. So that was still in his dream. So that sounds like a pretty exciting dream. And that God was talking to him in the middle of it is pretty neat. So after he woke up, he continued on. And before he continued on, he built an altar there. Remember in one of our first lessons, I was telling you that when people had heard from God, or when they were spoken to by God, they built an altar there to remember that God told them something special there. So he did build an altar when he woke up. And he poured some oil on it, anointing it. And that was where God said that land would be his. So he would return there someday. Early the next morning, he took his stone, he put it on that pillar, And then he said that if God is with me and will watch over me on this journey I am taking and will give me food to eat and clothes to wear, so that I return safely to my father's household, then the Lord will be my God. So he was saying, so if God takes care of me, then I'll know that that was him who talked in the dream, and he is going to be my God, and I'm going to serve him. So then Jacob continued on to his journey and came to the land of the eastern people. There he saw a well in the open country with 3 flocks of sheep lying near it, because the flocks were watered from that well. We all know that from wells comes water, right? Some of you probably even have wells at your house that you get your water from. Well, this well had a huge stone over the mouth of the well. When all the flocks were gathered there, the shepherds would roll the stone away from the well's mouth and water the sheep, and then they would return the stone to its place over the mouth of the well. So they probably would roll that stone off because obviously to get to the water, but they would probably put it back on, I would think, so no other animals would use that water or fall down the well, or no people would fall down the well. Here's a picture of a well. And that looks like the well that he went to. And see the big stone right there on top of it? So that's what they're talking about. And see the different sheep and the different people that are there as well? Yeah. All right. So that was the well he was at. So he asked the shepherds that were there, he said, my brothers, where are you from? And they said, we're from Haran. Well, guess what? That's where his uncle Laban lived. He said, do you know Laban? And he said, yes, we do. And then they said, and here comes his daughter Rachel with the sheep. So guess what? Rachel was also a shepherd. She was a shepherd or a shepherdess. I'm not sure if they called them something different if they were a girl, but she took care of the sheep too. So it wasn't just a job for boys. It was a job for girls or women as well. Look, he said, the sun is still high. It's not time for the flocks to be gathered. Water the sheep and take them back to pasture. So they did that. And while he was still talking to them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherd. When Jacob saw Rachel, daughter of his uncle Laban, and Laban's sheep, he went over and rolled the stone away from the mouth of the well and watered his uncle's sheep. Here he is, big, strong Jacob. And here's the first picture we get to see of Rachel. So see, he's moving that big old stone away from the well for her so she can water her sheep. And she's got a pretty red dress on in this picture. And see her sheep behind her? And she's also got her staff there. And that's what shepherds would use. So it says, let's see. Then Jacob kissed Rachel, oh my goodness, and began to weep aloud. He told Rachel that he was a relative of her father and the son of Rebekah. So she ran home and told her father. As soon as Laban heard this news, he hurried out to meet him. He gave him a big hug and a big kiss and brought him to his home. So he was ready to accept Jacob and to take care of him because he was family. After Jacob had stayed with him for a whole month, Laban said to him, so his uncle said, just because you're a relative of mine, you shouldn't work for nothing. I should have to pay you wages. What do you think they should be? Now Laban, he had a lot of money, and Jacob could have probably said a big amount of money if he wanted to tell his uncle that he wanted for working. But instead, he said, oh, here's a picture of them. Sorry. There they are talking. Jacob was in love with Rachel and said, I'll work for you 7 years in return for your younger daughter, Rachel. And there she is in the background in a red dress. See her that? So Jacob wanted to marry Rachel, and he said that he would work for Laban for 7 years in order to be able to marry her. Well, obviously today things don't work quite that way. Although men do go and ask for a father's permission or a father's blessing before they ask the woman to marry them. which is kind of like they did in the olden days. You just don't have to work for somebody for 7 years this time to marry them. So I wanted to show you this picture too, because this comes in next. So this picture is of Rachel. See Rachel in her red dress there? And that's her sister Leah, who has the purple dress, who's sitting sideways there. Leah was the older daughter, and they said that she was weak on the eyes, which means she wasn't quite as pretty as Rachel. But I think she was pretty, but not as pretty as Rachel. So Leah was the older sister, and Rachel was the younger sister, okay? So when Jacob asked Laban if he could have Rachel's hand in marriage, Laban said, sure, you'll work for me for 7 years, and you can have my daughter's hand. Because he said it's better that I give her to somebody I know and trust, somebody like Jacob, somebody who's in the family, than a stranger. He didn't want a stranger to be married to his daughter. So he said, stayed. And so Jacob served 7 years to get Rachel. And then once the 7 years were up, he said, give me my wife. The time is completed and I want to be married to her. So Laban brought together all the people of the place and gave a huge feast. So lots of food, I bet, lots of drinks, lots of people. And I wonder if they all dressed up. I'm not sure. But when evening came, he took his daughter Leah and brought her to Jacob. And so he brought his daughter Leah, who was the older girl, remember, in purple, instead of the younger girl. And Jacob was already asleep in his tent. And Leah came in with her veils on so he couldn't see her, and she laid down. And look, there's Jacob. And this is in the morning. When he woke up, he noticed that it was Leah laying next to him and not Rachel. And he was angry because guess what? He had been tricked this time. Remember how he had tricked his dad before with Esau? Well, guess what? It came back to him this time, and he got tricked by his uncle Laban. Not very nice once again, but I wonder if he might have learned his lesson at this point. So, very, very upset. So he went and talked to Laban, and he was angry. Look at this picture. See how mad he looks? He's very, very angry. He said, what is this you've done to me? I served you for Rachel, didn't I? Why have you deceived me? When morning came, there was Leah. Laban replied, it's not our custom here to give the younger daughter in marriage before the older one. So it was their custom back in those days that the older daughter would get married first. She would be the one that would get married first, and then the younger daughter, and they would go down from the oldest to the youngest. So because Rachel wasn't the oldest, Laban decided to trick Jacob and have Leah marry Jacob instead. So, you know, Jacob would be kind of mad at this point, and he was. But here was the deal that Laban said. He said, finish this daughter's bridal week, and then we will give you the younger one also, so you can marry Rachel at the end of the week, he says, in return for another 7 days of work. So he was going to make him work for another 7 years, excuse me. Some of you guys are 7 years old, so for all the days you've been alive, that's how long he would have had to work twice. But because he loved Rachel so much, he said, I sure will do that. When the Lord saw that Leah was not loved, he enabled her to conceive. And so from there on out, while he was working for Laban, between Rachel and Leah, he had 12 sons and 1 daughter, I think. But Rachel had the last son who was born, so Leah and her maidservant had a lot of the sons. And then Rachel had the final son, and his name was Joseph. But his 12 sons would also be known as the 12 tribes of Israel. That's who they're named after. So we'll learn more about that later. But what I wanted to say is that then here he is, and he's all happy because he's married to Rachel now too. And now they have a son. they've got Joseph, who we'll learn a little bit more about next week, because we're going to go ahead and go on with our characters. But they decided to go back and to see his family in Canaan. So they weren't just going to go back to the land that God had given them. He decided to go back and talk to his dad, Isaac, and to his brother Esau, and to apologize. He was scared to go back, but he did. He loaded up his whole family on some camels, his kids and his wives, and there he is in the front walking. And they went all the way back. When he got back, he had brought a bunch of different livestock with him, and he decided that he was going to offer that to Esau before he ever saw him. And he was really scared to see Esau again, because when he left, Esau wanted to kill him. But when he got there, instead, Esau saw that his brother was there, and he came running out and gave him a big hug, which is a perfect sign of forgiveness. So that's the other lesson that I wanted you guys to learn today is no matter what happens, and no matter if someone's tricked you or if someone's treated you unkind, it's always the best thing to do if you can forgive that person, because it will make you have a clean heart and it will make you feel better. And sometimes it's a huge surprise and it's a blessing to that person as well, because they don't expect that. So next week, we are going to start learning about Joseph. And he is the son of Jacob and Rachel. And I bet some of you even know some things about him. I hope you guys are loving the sunshine like I am. I went outside yesterday and played with my dogs, and I planted some flowers, and it was so much fun. And I hope that you guys are having great days in the sun and great times with your family. And I hope that I get to see you again very soon. But until then, I will continue bringing you stories online and lessons online, and hopefully some more crafts in the mail. All right, love you guys. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you soon.